History shows that when Muslims and Christians clashed, they discovered that they share much of the same values. The Crusaders and Saladin is an example. In the book Saladin in His Time, P.H. Newpie stated, "The Crusaders were fascinated by a Muslim leader who possessed virtues they assumed were Christian." Saladin's image was in the Millennium issue of Time magazine. Time magazine wrote about Dante's Divine Comedy and said, "But perhaps what should be most surprising in his catalog of great-hearted souls was a figure solitary, set apart. That figure was Saladin." When Dante, the most Christ-centered verse ever penned, wrote lionizing his name, Saladin had been dead for over 100 years. Dante's writings stand today, as it did in the past, as a testament to Saladin's extraordinary stature. When Saladin captured Jerusalem from the Franks, he spared the lives of 100,000 Christians. Richard the Lionheart negotiated peace with Saladin. Saladin could have exploited the situation since he had the upper hand. However, he followed Islam's quest for peace and spared their lives. God said, "It may be that God will grant love and friendship between you and those whom you hold as enemies. For God has power over all things, and God is oft forgiving, most merciful." Quran 60:7. In contrast, when the Crusaders entered the city 88 years earlier, they massacred 80,000 of the original inhabitants of the city. Among the slaughtered were Christians and Jews.
Saladin, or Saladin, I think is a very important figure to look at in Islam. Why? Because, a lot of times when we talk about religion, people will say, yeah, but you're talking about abstract thought, or you're talking about a set of beliefs. But how did Muslims actually act? Just as we can say, how did Christians actually act? And regrettably, we can go back and pick out, and there are, the negative images, the negative people, the negative examples. But we also have the great leaders, the enlightened leaders. And Saladin, or Saladin, represents that kind of enlightenment. When we look at the way in which the Muslims were viewed, those who were following this Muslim ruler, by even the Christian army and by the head of the Christian army, he was very well respected in his own time. Not only as a great warrior, but a man with a great sense of chivalry and moral code. And indeed, when the Muslims were victorious, he did not do what many at that time would have done, and that is, slaughter the soldiers, slaughter the women and children, but in fact spared those who were conquered.
In September 1192, during the Siege of Acre, King Richard the Lionheart gained a lasting respect for Saladin. When Richard fell sick, Saladin sent him his own physician, Ibn Maymun, the Maimonides, to treat him. Along with this health care, he frequently sent him ice to cool down his fever and plum fruits that were necessary for his recovery. Saladin went beyond justice in helping Christian women find their husbands. He ordered his soldiers to search for their missing ones. Those whose husbands or guardians were determined dead, Saladin ordered they receive compensation in currency from the treasury as if they were killed, not as soldiers of war, but by error or accident. During the Siege of Acre, several soldiers were captured. Among them was an old man who was so old that he was toothless and could hardly walk. Saladin questioned him as to why he was there. The old man said that he had no thought but to make a pilgrimage to the Church of the Resurrection in Jerusalem. Saladin was so touched by his answer and condition that he ordered that the old man be escorted to Jerusalem to fulfill his worship dream. Saladin entered the annals of Western history as a magnanimous and respected figure. Saladin's chivalry and high standards were at the soul of the plays and romances created by Sir Walter Scott. The French historian René Grousset wrote this about Saladin's character. It is equally true that his generosity, his piety, devoid of fanaticism, that flower of liberality and courtesy which had been the model of our old chroniclers, won him no less popularity in Frankish Syria than in the lands of Islam.